But so for Ron Paul to say that about Texas Republicans and the most powerful ones, the former president and the next president, was pretty courageous. To me, it was shocking. And then what happens is the conservatives become less statist than the left. By comparison, now that the left are the socialists instead of the free marketers, now the conservatives are more free market than them, at least. And that leaves libertarian free market types as allies with conservatives against the left. But then always in this uneasy relationship because the conservatives never really were libertarians in the first place. They were still, they are and still are the conservatives who want to use the power of state to keep things the same way. But then it leaves libertarians in the uncomfortable position, in that we're radicals, but as Brian Doherty put in his book, we're radicals for capitalism. We want private property rights and the wild and dynamic society that changes because of freedom, not because of government waging horrible social engineering campaigns against us all the time, the way it is under the liberals, right?
What an interesting concept.
And there's just so much more to it than that, but it's just, it's really great stuff. And he talks about how, this is one thing I love about Murray Rothbard too, is the progressive era of 100 years ago. He says, this was a right-wing plot, a right-wing corporate plot.
The progressive era was?
Yeah, because first of all, the liberals had stopped being liberals at all and had become socialists and Marxists, right, already. So from big business's point of view, how do you neutralize the Marxists? And the answer is, you don't just crush them, you buy them off, right? You bribe them and you make them good center-left Hillary Clintonites, right? So it's that you move them to the right from socialist to progressive. And then meanwhile, because big business doesn't want free market economics either anyway. So they say to the progressives, oh, you guys want to cartelize the economy? You want to centralize all economic power in Washington, D.C.? That makes sense to us too. You've got a deal.
Trojan horse.
That's right. Yeah. Because they don't want a free market because that's a risk to their power, a wild, dynamic economy. Once you're a billionaire, you want to go ahead and get you some congressmen and some regulators and make sure that you can stay one if you can. And so that's the deal. And so progressivism is a right-wing plot by these evil corporate chieftains. So says the greatest champion of capitalism in world history, Murray Rothbard. Right? No greater champion of free market, private property rights and capitalism
than him.
Natural rights theory. This is the point on the shiniest part of the diamond here. This is the guy. And he's saying, see how it's all corrupt? And that's always what's wrong with capitalism, is the state is there for the capitalist to bribe. And that ruins the game.
Yeah, and that's the thing. There's no perfect system because there's going to be some sort of loopholes that power-hungry people, I should say, use.
And this is why people become anarcho-capitalists, right? It's because they go, we got to repeal the Federal Reserve Act. And then somebody finally, pipes up and says, we should just repeal Article 1. Then there's no Congress to create a Federal Reserve in the first place, and then we can be free.
Burn it down.
Let's just not have a national government, then we won't have a national bank.
Yeah, it's like that meme where the guy's like,
yeah, exactly. You're catching on to me now. That's right. So,
what made Ron Paul such a, even in the modern day, like a hero to the movement? He seems to be the guy that when you talk to a pure libertarian is the most cited and the most, in many ways, I would say, on some stances, seemingly vindicated on things that he said in the past years ago.
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, everybody can go and read his archives at antiwar.com/Paul. We've been publishing him there since 1999. And he went back to the Congress. He had been in the Congress in the 70s and 80s, and then went back to medicine, and then went back to the Congress in 1997. And so antiwar.com has all of his foreign policy archives anyway. During that time, you can also find he's runs the Ron Paul Institute for Foreign Policy and Freedom. No. The Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity. I'm such an idiot. That's my thing. the Scott Horton Academy for Foreign Policy and Freedom that I'm working on. He has a book, which the title of my academy is a homage to his first book, which is a collection of speeches, which is called A Foreign Policy of Freedom. It's not his first book. It's one of his books, A Foreign Policy of Freedom. So my thing is called the Scott Horton Academy of Foreign Policy and Freedom, because I love Ron so much. Anyway, his thing is called the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity. And it's run by him and Daniel McAdams, who is his longtime foreign policy advisor and co-host of the Liberty Report together. And they still do the Liberty Report every day. And Ron is 90 years old. We just went and celebrated his birthday down in Houston in August. That's cool. It was really fantastic. Yeah. Everybody from the Ron Paul Revolution, only now we're all old and wrinkly and stuff. And it was really great. But anyway, so look, first of all, the reason why everybody loves him so much is just because of his character. Like, he really is a doctor, not a lawyer, and he's just a really sweet guy. And it matters a lot when you actually mean what you say and not just say the right thing.
Absolutely.
So, he's a baby doctor. He delivered 4,000 babies. He's been with his wife since they started dating at her Sweet 16 party. And then, he's been married to her this whole time. He's got 99 grandchildren, great-great-great-great-grandchildren or whatever. You know what I mean? He's one of those guys.
They got busy.
Captain of the baseball team.
Right.
Great guy. Just heroic guy. Then it's just libertarianism, right? He's a Rothbardian. He's a Ludwig von Mises guy on economics. So he's hardcore for gold. He came from kind of a conservative background. So he was like, a fiercely anti-communist and all that. But he knew about gold money. He was really smart about gold money. And so he knew that the Austrian school was right, that the Bretton Woods Agreement was flawed and was going to it was going to break essentially, and they'd have to throw it out, redo it. And which is exactly what happened when Nixon broke the gold standard, took us off the gold standard in 1971. Right, yeah. And so Dr. Paul was one of the ones who oh my God, there's like a seminal moment in his life that oh my God, see what they're doing. Because he really understood what that meant for taking the limit off of government money creation means taking the limit off of government spending and government's ability to stick their nose into every damn thing, So that was when he ran for Congress. You read his early speeches, you can tell he's much more wary of the Soviet Union and China because they are commies and they were powerful, especially the Soviet Union. But you can tell he kind of gets over it, where he could tell not that he's any less anti-communist, but he's less concerned about their power as he gets better and better, on more and more informed. I think.
What made him less concerned about their power?
Well, the Soviet Union was just falling apart. But I think he just saw, especially, in the late Clinton years and into the W. Bush years when he came back to Congress is, when I'm most familiar with him. During that time, it's just so obvious. America is the world superpower, not anyone else. And so there's kind of it's more popular now and more justifiable now, but there's always been kind of a very kind of afraid of China sentiment on the right, that he could have been like one of those guys, but he wasn't. He was more like, nah, we should celebrate them getting rich. He was not for bringing them into the WTO. He wasn't for a bunch of government programs to help influence offshoring, increase offshoring to China and all these crazy things that Congress is up to. But I don't think, certainly by the time the Soviet Union was gone, he would have been, and I don't think he was much of a supporter of the Cold War, even in the Reagan years, quite frankly. I think he was just more wary of them, in spirit. But by the 90s, China's flag is still red, but they'd abandoned communism and they were trying to be our friends. And he's just a realistic guy. You know what I mean? And he was never a demagogue. So I think he was rightfully concerned about the Soviet Union at the height of their power, and then less so as it waned. You know what I mean? Right. He's just always, he's very realistic about that. But then, so in the Clinton years, when I first started, I first saw him on TV in the spring of 97, and he was holding up some papers. It's I'm watching C-SPAN in the middle of the night. I'm the only guy in Austin. He's the only guy in the House chamber, except
you're 20 years old watching C-SPAN. Tough.
I had a girlfriend. But so there's Mr. Speaker, whoever was filling in for the speaker, and Ron Paul, and he holds up a piece of some papers, and he says, it's in the British press today that George H.W. Bush, or they didn't call him H.W. then, but President Bush was selling chemical weapons to Iraq right up until the invasion of Kuwait. What the hell is that? And then I look at the bottom of the screen, it says Ron Paul, R, Texas. I'm from Texas. And I know that the Bushes, they're from Connecticut and whatever, but they lived in Texas and they're very influential in Texas politics. The son was the governor at the time.
Yeah.
The father had been very influential.
Isn't that funny how the Bushes went from Connecticut to Texas and the Clintons went from Arkansas to New York? Funny how the
follow the money, yeah.
How the lines work there.
Yeah. But so for Ron Paul to say that about Texas Republicans and the most powerful ones, the former president and the next president, was pretty courageous. To me, it was shocking. And then I started paying more attention to him through all avenues. I don't really remember. I know the New American magazine covered him a lot. My friend Will Grigg was the editor of the New American. And so they would cover him. And then when I started doing radio, he had his weekly update. I bet it still works. 888-322-1414. And on my pirate radio show, I would call up and then play that over the air. And he would read his weekly essay into his voicemail machine.
That's funny.
And then so I would call that, put that on the air. I would print out copies of his speeches and give them to people in my cab. Hey, do you know there's one good congressman? Yeah, no, the rest of them are all absolute devils. But this guy,
man.
Yeah, and he had a couple of great speeches. A republic, if you can keep it. And sorry, Mr. Franklin, we're all Democrats now. And they're really good. So I would give those to people in my cab. And
this is before they had 5-star ratings.
And they didn't have social media. We didn't have MySpace like all you kids now. And then look, and he's just good on everything. Like I said, he's why I knew there was a .com bubble. He's why I knew that there was a coming war on terrorism. He was absolutely fantastic on opposing Iraq War II. He introduced a declaration of war against Iraq in the Foreign Affairs Committee and then gave a speech that I'm voting against it. But those of you who want to support this war and are going to vote for the authorization, I demand that you go ahead and vote for this declaration of war and send it to the House floor and go ahead and take responsibility and stand for your action.
Oh, I see.
Right?
Yeah.
And then they wouldn't do
Poison
it.
pill.
Yep. And then, no, not poison pill, just challenge to them.
Right. No,
Yeah.
You have to take responsibility.
Yeah. And then, so Henry Hyde was the chair of the committee, and he's more famous for being one of the impeachment managers during Clinton's impeachment in 98. But he was the head of the committee, and I don't know if you can find this video anymore. I couldn't find it, actually, the last time I looked. But Henry Hyde said to Ron Paul, he goes, "We don't go by that part of the Constitution anymore. It's an anachronism." And so just pipe down you.
God damn.
And that was, and that would have been in October of 2002.
That's the quiet part out loud.
Voting for the authorization to launch that war. So, and he was just fantastic. You can find, and I quote him in my book in 1997 and in 1998, he wrote a letter to Bill Clinton, said, "You've got to stop bombing Iraq from bases in Saudi. You're going to cause terrorism against this country. This bin Laden guy is dangerous, and we got to stop bombing Iraq from bases in Saudi." He said that in 97 and 98.
Nailed it.
Dude, he's the reason I used to tell people in my cab, because I'm from Austin, that this .com thing is a giant inflationary bubble and it's going to pop. So cash your stock options out now, pal. And then, of course, I was right about that. Not because I'm an Austrian economist, just because I listened to Ron. That was it. And then Dr. Paul. And then same thing, of course, for the housing bubble, which he said then. He goes, now all you're going to do is inflate the housing bubble, the substitute for the .com bubble you just inflated. You guys suck at this. He was much more polite at that, but absolutely right. And so that was why when he ran for president in 2007, and it was unfortunate, the crash happened in September of 2008. Right before the election.
Yeah.
But if the crash had happened September of 2007,
he wins.
He'd have been the president, dude.
Might have won.
Oh, Barack Obama can stand there and smile, but Ron Paul can explain to you the boom and the bust business cycle, Austrian business cycle theory. He's the only one who's right about that, and it would have been a whole different world. And look, he had kids, and they did it. Kids were burning dollar bills, chanting, "End the Fed," in 2007. Starting at the University of Michigan there. And that was during the inflationary bubble still. That was before the crash.
Yeah.
But it was still prices rising, not anything like what we're dealing with now, but prices were rising. And these kids understood. He had taught them well enough by the time of that speech that they knew that, it's inflationary times now, which just means the coming bust is going to really hit hard, which is, of course, exactly what happened in the fall of 2008. And then everybody said, well, now what exactly did Ron Paul say about the economy? And then they go back and look what he said. And he didn't just say, well, I think the economy is on shaky fundamentals or whatever. No, he explained exactly what the hell was going on and why and whose fault it was, the Federal Reserve.
I've seen
Alan
some
Greenspan
of those speeches.
and Ben Bernanke. Yeah, dude, for real.
There's some of them that are like, whoa.
And so look, he's the anti-war Republican way before it was cool, making them crazy, but doing the right thing. I mean, he quoted Jesus Christ and the Golden Rule, and they booed him off they booed him at a Republican debate. This is W. Bush days. And he's just saying, listen, guys, we should not be doing this. We should not be doing this. That could be, his overall, his theme. And he was just so right about all of it. And it's famous, if you're not familiar, you may be familiar, but your audience should be familiar with what's called the Giuliani Moment from May 2007, when Ron Paul got in a big argument with Rudy Giuliani at the Republican debate. Mm-hmm. And Ron Paul says it's American intervention in the Middle East that caused September 11th. And Rudy Giuliani tries to bully him and say, I demand you retract that and take that back. I can't believe that you said that America deserved September 11th, which is not what he said. And then Wendell Goler from Fox News says, Dr. Paul, you're saying we invited the attack? And he sticks to his guns. And he says, yes, I'm saying the CIA is right when they coin the phrase and teach about blowback. And that means the consequences of our foreign policies. So when we did the coup in Iran in 1953, that resulted in our hostage crisis in 1979. That's how this kind of thing works. When we look at on September 11, 2001, we'd been bombing Iraq for 10 years before that. And that was what did it. And the whole place goes, oh, rabble, 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 and gets all upset. And then the next day, immediately after the show, the phone poll says that Ron Paul wins. Nobody wants to hear from Rudy Giuliani, the mayor of 9/11, up there demagoguing. Everybody, he won by a huge margin because people are like, hey, that old man respects me enough to tell me the truth, which, by the way, is feeding people a pretty bitter pill.
Oh, very bitter.
September 11th didn't happen because you're so good to your mama and evil can't stand that. No, it was Bill Clinton killing people with your money and, let's get real, your blessing that got those towers knocked down. And people went, you know what? That sounds true to me. I remember Bill Clinton mass murdering people every chance he got from the moment he was sworn in. Now that I think about it. So, sounds right. And so he won over 20 million people overnight with that. There's a great documentary about it called, it's a somewhat redundant title, but you can find it. It's called For Liberty, How Ron Paul Watered the Withered Tree of Liberty.
All right, I know. I'm coming off 2 straight bad beats. What was looking like a 4-0 defending Super Bowl champion Eagles team that was going to run over the entire league has been quite humbled over the last 2 weeks. There's no doubt about that. That said, despite the woes my Eagles are going through, I can still have fun each week of the NFL season playing along on Prize Picks. Now, we haven't been able to get the running game going this year, despite the fact that we have the number one player in the NFL as voted in the NFL Top 100 by his fellow players, Saquon Barkley. That aside, I still have faith that Kevin Patullo can get this offense going, and I can put that faith to the test if I decide to pick more than one rushing touchdown for Saquon Barkley this weekend. But it's not just the Eagles either. You can play along with every single team. Looking out on the West Coast, will Justin Herbert throw for more than 255 yards this weekend? Or down in the ATL, Bijan Robinson, is he good for 75 or more on the ground? You can make all these picks and more on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. Prize Picks is also the only app that offers stacks, meaning you can pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. Want to pick more on Josh Allen's pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns? Well, you can do that now only on Prize Picks. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code Julian to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. You can download the Prize Picks app on Apple iOS or Google, and the link is down in my description below. So once again, use code Julian to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right.
Whatever. But it's like there's a director's cut that's like 3 hours long or something, and it's so good. It just gets better and better and better and better the whole time. And it's all of these Americans who were like anti-war Republicans, man. They were just waiting for someone who was not a commie, not Michael Moore, the big bat millionaire, communist hypocrite whose movies don't make any sense. Like, what is even the point of Fahrenheit 9/11 anyway? He couldn't tell you. Nobody knows. And people had just not wanted to have to be like Michael Moore. Here, Ron Paul goes,
something reasonable.
Yeah, Ron Paul goes, I'm a Texas Republican. And I'm telling you, you don't have to believe in this. You don't have to go along with W. Bush. And people were like, great. It's just passing out hall passes, right? He's just giving you permission. If you like your identity, you can keep it. I'm not asking you to move left. I'm just telling you that you don't have to believe in this stupid crap anymore. Right. You felt all this pressure to go along with this stuff. Forget that. It's a bunch of crap. And then like, that was it. Blinders off, and people, just tens of millions of people. And then it was great because it was leading with peace. And then also with the pure free market capitalist doctrine and economic theory and whatever like that, and revisionist history and all the great stuff that comes with libertarianism. It was just the best way to do it.
Yeah, it's been interesting watching him like kind of have his legacy formed after the fact, though. He was kind of a victim of being around. It's weird. He was around at simultaneously the perfect time and also the wrong time, because he was on the wrong side, you know, just by party when an administration went totally south, but was righteously not standing with them and was actually pointing out all the problems from a place of like kind of standing above everyone, because all the Democrats and Republicans voted for the Iraq war and everything, obviously. So people all had fault in it, and he was like the one guy going, what the fuck here? And now people are kind of waking up to that, like, oh shit. And you do wonder, it's a great point you make, if that crash happens in September 07, which if you look at the charts now in hindsight, it absolutely could have. Oh yeah. Right? If that had happened, it's an enormous trajectory change in history, because he is the one guy, like, I always say Jesus couldn't have beat Barack Obama in 08 because of everything that happened right there. But like, he's the one guy that if he had had enough time to be able to say, look at all the tapes of me talking about how this was going to happen, he could have ran to the, you know, center of Bush and totally away from him and won that election.
Yeah, and with 8 months before the convention. Yep. Right? He'd have been unstoppable.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And then, I'm sorry, there was one thing I was going to say about Dr. Paul. Oh, yes, about just, I guess, the fact that W. Bush was still in the chair when he ran against what was going on in 08. And so it just made it so hard to do that, to separate from the current president that hard at that time. And it was so ironic that the American people at that time were like really rebelling against all of W. Bushism. And I think there's quite a few indications at the time that one of the reasons that people wanted to nominate and vote for Barack Obama over Hillary Clinton was because on the surface, he was so much different than Bush. And it was, in a way, it was like an attempt to apologize to the world for re-electing Bush. Right. That like, hey, innocent mistake in 2000, anyone could have made it. But after he lied us into war, Then we reelected him. Come on, man. And then by 2008, and after Katrina had drowned New Orleans in 2005 and all of that, people are so over it. And
thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.